The next time you order a martini at the bar, pay close attention to this. You might be happily shelling out $15 for a drink boldly labeled premium. But according to US law, vodka is legally defined as a liquid that is completely colorless, odorless, and tasteless. So what exactly are we actually drinking? And here is the absolute kicker. This seemingly pure spirit possesses one of the absolute most bizarre evolutionary journeys. Born straight from the mud, violently stripped of its flavor, completely eradicated of its color. Yet somehow it actively manipulates the taste buds of millions of consumers across the entire globe. Let's kick things off with a dead simple question. What do you think that crystal clear liquid is actually made of? Potatoes, right? The vast majority of us genuinely believe that. Hollywood and the mainstream media have aggressively pinned the image of snow-covered Russian potato fields straight into our minds. But I have to be completely honest with you. That is a spectacular, massive deception. In reality, potatoes currently account for less than a mere 5% of the entire global vodka market. Right here in the US, roughly 96% of the vodka you buy is distilled straight from grains. The root of this myth is incredibly pragmatic. Eastern European winters back in the 18th century were brutally, unforgivingly harsh. Grain crops violently failed season after season. Desperate peasants were forced to use potatoes as a dirt-cheap survival mechanism. But for commercial mass production, potatoes are an absolute nightmare. Potatoes yield an incredibly pathetic amount of alcohol. You literally need nearly 15 pounds of potatoes just to distill a single 750 ml bottle. It is wildly expensive. It is agonizingly labor-intensive. Just look at the absolute heaviest hitters on the market. Tito's, forged from yellow corn. Smirnoff, predominantly corn. The wildly luxurious French Grey Goose, winter wheat. Even Russian Standard is cooked down from wheat. True, authentic potato-based bottles like Chopin or Luxusoa are now an incredibly rare breed. So what exactly is vodka genuinely made of? If you ask me to define whiskey, I will instantly talk about barley and charred oak barrels. But with vodka, the boundaries of raw ingredients are completely and utterly obliterated. Under current federal law, it can literally be forged from absolutely anything. As long as the base material contains sugar or starches that can be aggressively fermented into sugar. Absolutely anything. This blows the doors wide open to an intensely curious world of raw materials. Let's anatomically dissect the ingredient lists of countless bottles sitting right on the American market. The results are sheer insanity. You think grapes are strictly reserved for wine? Ciroc distills its vodka straight from French grapes. You think cow's whey is just worthless garbage? The brand Black Cow over in the UK actively morphed this literal cheese-making byproduct directly into a hard spirit. Even more wildly, Castra Elion harvests violently crushed olives straight from Greece to distill their liquor. Curie Vodka literally treks high up into the Andes Mountains of Peru just to utilize ancient quinoa grains. There are even bottles forged entirely from sugar beets, raw honey, or maple tree sap. Their absolute singular common denominator doesn't lie in what people actually toss into the vat. It lies entirely in what they violently strip away. But long before it morphed into the luxurious multi-ingredient beverage sitting right in your hand, its primal original purpose was incredibly dark. Now let's ruthlessly rewind time. The very name vodka is deeply rooted in the Slavic word voda. It literally translates to a little water. The absolute first time this word ever appeared in written text was back in 1405, specifically right inside the Oktygrodzki court registry documents in Poland. But listen to this very closely. It absolutely did not appear under the beverage section. It was strictly categorized as a cosmetic cleanser and a medicinal remedy. Over in Russia, the exact same story unfolds. In 1386, ambassadors from Genoa hauled in something called aqua vitae and aggressively presented it to the Grand Duke of Moscow. The water of life. The alcohol content back then was a mere pathetic 14%, wildly weak compared to our modern-day standards. It was absolutely not birthed to fuel wild parties. It was a literal tool for survival. Monks actively utilized it to ruthlessly sterilize open wounds. Even more bizarre? Back in 1534, botanist Stefan Falomires explicitly wrote in a medical document that this specific liquid possessed powerful aphrodisiac properties. He firmly believed it actively boosted fertility, a profoundly mystical remedy of the Middle Ages. So exactly how did a low-proof medicinal remedy violently morph into the highly combustible liquid sitting in our modern bars today? To forge this level of absolute purity, the raw ingredients must endure an incredibly brutal process. First, they create a weak, soupy fermented wash sitting at a mere 8 to 15% ABV. Then, they aggressively pump it straight into massive continuous distillation columns, towering as high as a 3-story building. They crank up the heat. Alcohol violently vaporizes at exactly 172 degrees Fahrenheit, 78 degrees Celsius, rising to the top long before the water does. The distillers will ruthlessly discard the heads because they are packed with highly toxic methanol. They completely trash the tails loaded with foul impurities. They meticulously extract strictly the heart of the distillation run. And right here is where a classic masterful marketing scam comes into play. You've heard the ads boldly claiming a bottle was distilled hundreds of times, right? The absolute truth is, those towering columns house hundreds of tiny perforated plates. Every single time the vapor forces its way through one of those plates, they legally count it as a separate distillation. It is nothing more than a highly deceptive play on words. Grey Goose is so insanely confident in their premium raw ingredients that they literally only distill it one single time through 5 continuous steps. There is absolutely zero hundreds of times nonsense. And here is the absolute most bitterly ironic part. Straight off the still, the alcohol content violently skyrockets to a staggering 95%. Absolutely nobody can drink that. They are strictly forced to aggressively dilute it down to 40% 80 proof. What exactly does that mean? Roughly 60 to 70% of the volume inside your lavish and $100 bottle is literally just plain water. You are actively paying for fancy glacial spring water, a heavy crystal bottle, and highly aggressive marketing gimmicks about filtering it through diamond dust. Yet whether it is heavily filtered through crushed diamonds or quartz rock, this pristine purity sometimes actively conceals incredibly unpredictable, devastating hazards. Its seemingly harmless crystal-clear facade once served as a literal cloak for the Grim Reaper. During the dark era of the underground market, desperate bootleggers actively brewed illicit bathtub vodka. They recklessly cut it with harsh industrial chemicals. The residual methanol levels violently triggered mass blindness and ruthlessly stole the lives of thousands of people. Even massive, deeply prestigious brands have found themselves slapped with heavy federal bans. Have you ever actually heard of Vodka? This iconic Polish brand has a deeply rooted tradition of steeping bison grass straight into their liquor. Sounds incredibly earthy and natural. But the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, absolutely banned this specific F-grass outright. The exact reason: it packs a chemical compound known as coumarin. Hard scientific trials definitively proved that this substance is highly toxic to the human liver. Vodka was violently forced to completely alter their centuries-old formula, stripping this compound away just to legally step foot onto the American market. Beyond the sheer toxicity, there is another colossal myth that desperately needs to be completely shattered. The deeply ingrained, odorless, tasteless stereotype. The regulations of the U.S. Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau (TTB) once strictly forced it to be without distinctive character. Completely and utterly false. Vodka absolutely packs flavor. Hard science has definitively proven that right down at the molecular level, water and alcohol actively forge a cage-like structure. Roughly every 5 water molecules physically trap and embrace one single alcohol molecule. This exact cage structure flawlessly traps microscopic remnants of the raw ingredients. Wheat consistently delivers a remarkably soft, mellow sweetness. Rye forcefully leaves behind an aggressively spicy black pepper finish. Potatoes forge a distinctly heavy, creamy, almost buttery mouthfeel. The Scottish brand Exmuse even actively engineered a specific vodka that tastes almost identical to a single malt Scotch whiskey. It doesn't just flawlessly deceive the human palate. This liquid wields enough sheer power to completely manipulate entire massive empires. Do not view this as a mere beverage sitting gracefully on a bar counter. You must view it as a colossal, historical money-printing machine. Back in the 19th century, deep inside the Russian Empire, the taxes aggressively levied against this exact liquid once funded a staggering 40% of the entire national budget. You heard that right. 40%. By 1911, it completely monopolized an insane 89% of all alcohol consumed across the entire Russian territory. It is literal tangible power. According to countless political scholars, completely seizing the state-owned alcohol monopoly, Rospirtprom, was an absolutely pivotal chess move for the Russian leadership. The brand Patinka was once the absolute best-selling vodka in their domestic market, relentlessly funneling colossal economic profits straight to the top. Its sheer power spread so violently that it literally threatened to rip Europe apart. Have you ever heard of the vodka war inside the EU? Nations strictly residing in the traditional vodka belt, like Poland and Sweden, aggressively and frantically lobbied lawmakers. They attempted to brutally force the European Union to enact a strict law. Only spirits distilled strictly from grains or potatoes could legally bear the name vodka. Their true motive? They desperately wanted to completely annihilate their southern European rivals who were actively utilizing leftover grape pomace to distill wildly cheap liquor. A profoundly ruthless trade war ignited purely over a literal name, and its scorching heat continues to burn fiercely right up to this very day. From a desperate survival remedy, it aggressively morphed into a literal religion of power. But where exactly does its ultimate limit lie? Its absolute limit is the razor-thin boundary separating life and death. The standard commercial baseline sits squarely at 40% ABV 80 proof. But the underworld absolutely refuses to stop there. There are literal tangible monsters currently existing out there. Balkan 176 degrees, produced straight out of Bulgaria, wields an aggressive, terrifying alcohol content soaring up to 88%. Or the notorious American Everclear violently redlining at a staggering 95% ABV 190 proof. They are strictly banned from being sold across countless states right here in the US. Why? Because attempting to drink these directly straight can literally rip your life away in an instant. Your throat will suffer severe, excruciating chemical burns. Look deeply back at its grandiose journey. Whiskey stands incredibly proud strictly because of what is actively added to it. The prolonged aging time, the deep, heavy oak essence, the thick, pungent peat smoke. But vodka? It is a profoundly, aggressively inverted philosophy. It stands fiercely proud strictly because of what violently strips away absolutely no color. Zero impurities. The more profoundly empty it becomes, the more obscenely expensive it gets. It is an absolutely flawless blank canvas, an invisible solvent violently eager to swallow up and seamlessly blend with every single culture across the face of the earth. The absolute next time you sit down at a bar, order up a martini and stare deeply into that crystal clear liquid. Remember this. You are absolutely not just looking at a mere blend of water and alcohol. You are staring directly into the deeply rooted legacy of desperate peasants, the absolute sheer power of global politics, and the absolute most spectacular art of manipulation in the entire history of humanity.